Welcome to Deep Dive by HOU, the wellness podcast where peace meets power and depth drives everything. Interviews, insights, meditations, and more. Let's dive in. Hello, and welcome back to Deep Dive by HOU. I'm so excited that you're here. This week, we are talking about something that is near and dear to my heart, which is the Archives Book Club by HOU, where nonfiction dives into deeper meaning. It is the official book club for HOU, and it is something that I'm kind of obsessed with. I launched this book club about 5 months ago now, and it has quickly become one of my favorite parts of HOU. I have a wonderful group of women where we come together each month and we're able to discuss these books about transformation, psychology, wellness, all different sorts of topics. And we really get to sit and discuss with each other how we feel about the book, how we feel about the themes, and see other people's opinions. And it's such a cool environment, and I'm so excited to see how it will grow. And I would love for any of you to join us. I try to make this book club as easy as possible because I want people to feel comfortable coming and to look forward to it. I don't want it to be like homework or a job or for you to feel bad if you can't finish the book or you didn't really get to it. It's a virtual book club, so you can show up from wherever. It is on the first Tuesday at 8 p.m. of every month. So I kind of wanted to make it later in the evening so you can get home from work, whatever you're doing. You can go to the gym, you can eat dinner, and then you can just grab some tea, relax, go have your own space, have a really cool discussion, and then you can go do whatever you want for the rest of the night. And the way I format it is that I make it so it's not totally, like, obviously I encourage you to read the book, and I think that you should do read the books. But the way I structure it is I pick a couple different quotes from the book, I throw them up for group discussion, and then after that, I allow anybody to suggest anything that they wanted to discuss throughout the book. And by doing this, and because it is nonfiction and not fiction, it's pretty easy for people to be able to, grab onto what's going on, be able to at least respond to the quote. That's the beauty of a nonfiction book club. In fiction, if you don't know the plot, if you don't know the characters, if you don't know their development, it's really hard to come to a book club and actively participate. But the beauty of nonfiction is that you don't really have a lot of those things. It's mostly just facts, thoughts, theories, and pretty much anyone can kind of have an opinion or at least grab on to what other people are talking about. It makes it really cool for conversation. And a lot of the reason I started this book club is because I was looking for a book club like that. Obviously, over the past 5 years, I've done a lot of reading into this space, and I really wanted a book club that was going into nonfiction, and I couldn't find one. So I really wanted to be able to talk to other people about these books, about their opinions, about what they thought, whether they agreed, whether they disagreed, because I was reading so many of these books, and to be honest, I don't love self-help books. I find a lot of them to be annoying, but I have found some that are truly life-changing and have really taught me a lot. So, and not everything we read is self-help. We dive into all sorts of things. But yeah, I just really wanted to talk to people about them. So that's really why I created this club. And I wanted it to be a community about growth and about self-discovery and learning tools to help you. It's been really cool and really fun. And we're on our 4th book this month, and we've read 3 books. So I wanted to kind of give a little review of each of those books, give you an idea of the kind of books that we've been reading and what we're reading now, and just encourage you to join and come because I would love for you to be there. So the first book that we read back in November was The Courage to be Disliked, which I feel like has been talked about a lot recently, and it's a big red book, so it really stands out on the bookshelf. To be honest, when I first picked this book up and when I suggested, because by the way, I read the books with the book club, we vote on the books. So I present 3 books and then we vote on them. And then whatever book is most popular is chosen and then we read it. And I really want to be included. So I read it with everybody. So I had never read this book before. And I was expecting it to really be more of a story, but this was like a psychology book. It's rooted in Adlerian psychology. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. And it makes some very interesting claims. The whole book is kind of about this argument that all problems are interpersonal relationship problems and that you are not defined by your past and trauma does not determine your future. So it pretty much directly opposes Carl Jung's ideology that your childhood trauma kind of defines who you are and who you become and all of the issues that you have. And it seems to be the overarching, more popular trend, especially nowadays. I feel like people are very focused on their childhood traumas and how that affects them. And I agree that you do have to look back into those. But it was interesting to read something that kind of opposed that because I do think that at some point, as hard as it is, and I think as tough of a swallow as it was while reading the book, I do think at some point in your life, you have to find a way to let go of things and that, like, you are the captain of your own ship and you can't let so many things determine who you are and that it is up to you. But I think there's a nuance to that. So I think the quote that kind of stuck with all of us and I think the defining factor of the book was that freedom is being disliked by other people. And that sparks a ton of discussion about our people pleasing tendencies and how we all interact with the world. Because if we're honest, most of us, we really care about being liked and we care about being understood and we don't like people to not like us. And this book challenges that and it discusses that if you want to be free in your life, you can't care what other people feel about it. And I do believe that to be true. But I think there's nuance and balance to everything. So I think a lot of people will take the courage to be disliked and not caring what other people think as a permission slip to do whatever they want without caring. I don't think it's that. I don't think you have permission to go be like a terrible person and not care what people think about you. But I do think there comes a point in your life where you have to understand that some people will like you and some people won't, and you can't do anything about it. You could be the best person doing the most, volunteering every weekend, being kind over giving, and there are still going to be people that don't like you. And it's accepting that and understanding that. So this book focuses a lot on that idea and the idea that it's your relationships that are holding you back from who you want to be in the life that you want to live. We really liked that it was an empowering book. It was about taking ownership over your own narratives, but we also had critiques. The dialogue was pretty repetitive. We felt like some of the arguments were a little oversimplified, and I think the way that it addressed trauma was a bit extreme, almost like it was dismissing it. So as a group, we landed on 3 stars. By archive standards, that's still a win. It definitely sparked some debate, but it made us think and it gave us some tangible takeaways. So we did like it, and I would recommend it to somebody who is really struggling with people pleasing. I think at the point that I read this book, that isn't a thing I struggle with. I kind of worked through that, years ago. Not that I'm like totally overcome, but I think for the most part, I have to deeply understand, especially with doing what I'm doing, that some people will appreciate it and other people's won't. And I have to be okay with that. And I have to be okay with myself in doing that I'm not going to make everybody happy and not everyone's going to like me. But if you are struggling with that and that idea, I think it's a wonderful book to read, would highly recommend. Then in December, we switched gears and we read The Molecule of More, which was a very different energy. This was much more of like a science-driven book. And this book explored dopamine, which is the chemical of desire, aka the molecule of more. And the overarching theme of this is that dopamine is not just about pleasure, it's about the pursuit of happiness. So it is not just the pleasure chemical. It is the driving force behind most of our decisions, which that distinction was powerful because it explained to us why we chase so often and why the journey and the chase of things almost feels better than when you actually achieve it. So it was an interesting thing for us to discuss, kind of like why we're always being pulled to the next thing, but we're never satisfied with what we have. And it gave us a lot of language for ambition, for restlessness, for the constant, like, what's next feeling. And I also had a lot in this book where I was like, wow, that's so me. Like, I'm such a dopamine addict. But we loved how accessible the science was, and we loved the framework around the motivation and desire. But again, there were parts we weren't in love with. I think some of the sections were long-winded. Some examples felt stretched out. There wasn't a lot of explanation for how to apply it to your daily life, like how to overcome it. So that was one kind of issue we had. But overall, it was a 3-star, thought-provoking, a little repetitive, but still really interesting. And this was one of those books where while I was reading it, I was like, "Oh, this is interesting. This explains a lot about me." But I was like, ultimately, it was kind of a middle of the road book. Like, it was a good book. It was something I would recommend to somebody else, but I wasn't in love with it. But over the past couple months, I've thought a lot about it. So it's definitely one of those books that has stuck with me longer than I thought it would. And of all the 3 books we have read, it is probably the one I think about the most. So if that says anything, it could be very interesting for you. And then our January book was When Things Fall Apart by Pema Chodron. I have no idea if I'm saying that right. And this was definitely a different vibe. So this one was quieter, it was softer. It was rooted in Buddhist philosophy and meditation, and about how we relate to discomfort. And this was also surprising to me because when I picked the book up, I again thought it was going to be a story, and it wasn't. It was really a lot about Buddhism and about meditation. So it wasn't necessarily what I expected it to be. And I almost wished it was a story, but that's my own personal thing. But anyways, the quote from this book that was really kind of the theme is that nothing ever goes away until it has taught us what we need to know, which is true. You know, we will experience the same thing over and over again in our life until we learn how to overcome it, until we learn how to deal with it differently. I think if any of us reflect back on our life, we'll see that we have a lot of patterns and we invite in a lot of the same issues. And it's not until we figure that out that we can really move on to the next thing. And this book is all about, rather than trying to fix or outrun your pain, it invites you to stay with it, to sit with it, and to learn from it. So it's not necessarily about solutions. It's about your relationship to what's going on and how you're moving through it. It talked a lot about steadiness, especially for people in transitional seasons. And it was a very grounding book. And, you know, it talked a lot about how you have to get comfortable with uncertainty and it's a part of being human. What we didn't love is that, I think it was really centered as a Buddhism book, which wasn't really how it was marketed. And it's a bit of a step-by-step guide into meditation. So it was a little repetitive. I think it kind of glazed over a lot of things. And rather than going deeper into her stories, they were kind of like little anecdotes she threw in. So I felt like she could have been better about explaining those parts. As a group overall, it was our favorite book thus far. So it got a 4-star. And I think it really resonated with a lot of people. While it might not have been the book for me personally, it is a book I would recommend to somebody else if they were just getting into Buddhism, if they were getting into meditation. But for me, I've dealt a lot with that already, so it wasn't necessarily what I needed. And the interesting thing about all 3 books is that they were different. So the first one, we were detaching from approval. The second one, we were understanding our drive for more. And the third was learning to sit with discomfort. So identity, desire, compassion, and that's what the archives is all about. We read this nonfiction to dive into deeper meaning in all different aspects of our lives. Which leads us to what we're reading this month, which is Come As You Are by Emily Nagoski. And that explores female sexuality through neuroscience and psychology and reframing what's normal and challenging shame-based myths. And I was really excited to read this book. To be honest, I have already read this book, and I think that every woman should read this book. I think, you know, sexual wellness is really important. I think it's important for women to understand their bodies and, more importantly, how their mind interacts with their bodies and how they feel about their bodies. So I think it's a really powerful read. Our next meeting is this Tuesday, March 2nd at 8 p.m., where we will be discussing this. And I invite all of you to come, even if you haven't read the book. I think it'll be a really wonderful, beautiful discussion. It's clearly, and I just want to be clear, meant to be a safe space. It's not about discussing any like very personal acts or anything like that. It's more about your mind, about how you feel about your body, how you interact with your body, and the psychology and wellness. Because I think sex holds a lot of shame for a lot of people, but it's a huge part of your life. And there needs to be more open discussion about it in a way that makes you feel good and empowered about it. So would love to have you there. If it sounds like your kind of space, would love for you to come. You can sign up at www.houseofundine.com and you will get the Zoom link. You do need to be 18 or older to participate, but if you are 18 or up, please come join. And again, you can join from anywhere and you don't have to finish the book. You can just come for community, grab your tea, show up, and follow me at House of Undine for meeting updates. We will be voting on the new book this Tuesday and announcing it. Stay tuned for more book reviews. I am so excited about this book club. I really hope you join, and I can't wait to talk to you next week. I hope you all have a great week. Love ya. Bye. Thanks for diving deep with us. If you like this episode, share it, rate it, and come back next week for more. This is Deep Dive by House of Undine, where peace meets power. The content presented in this podcast is for informational and educational purposes only and is not intended to constitute professional advice of any kind, including but not limited to medical, legal, financial, psychological, or other professional services. Nothing discussed should be interpreted as medical advice, diagnosis, treatment, or prevention of any disease, nor as a substitute for advice from a licensed physician, healthcare provider, or other qualified professional. You should not disregard or delay seeking medical or other professional advice because of something you have heard on this podcast. Always consult a licensed physician, healthcare provider, or other qualified professional regarding your specific circumstances before making decisions related to your health, treatment, medication, supplements, finances, legal matters, or lifestyle. If you believe you are experiencing a medical or other emergency, contact your physician or the appropriate emergency services immediately.